Lions are obviously playing well. They're one of the best teams in the NFL, even without Aiden Hutchinson. But I do want to dig into that a little bit because this Lions team isn't just trying to win the division. They're not just trying to squeak into the playoffs. They're trying to win the whole thing, right? And I think that they have the DNA to win the whole thing. We saw that this past weekend with a massive comeback win and a buzzer beater field goal to win against the Houston Texans on Sunday Night Football. Their pass rush specifically is something that we have talked about over the last couple of weeks. But now that they have added Za'Darius Smith, now that we have a couple of weeks to really, well, more than a couple of weeks, to really dig into how they have dealt without having Aiden Hutchinson. I mean, when you look at this team through the first 6 weeks of the season, those are the first 6 weeks that Aiden Hutchinson was playing. Were the offensive lines the best that they were going up against? No, but still, far and away, the number 2 overall graded defensive line in the NFL and the number 1 graded pass rush defensive line in the NFL. Since that time, so week 7 to right now, they are 28th in the NFL in terms of their defensive line's pass rush grade. That's edge rushers and interior defensive linemen combined. So, Ollie, it was always going to be a little bit of a shock. Like, okay, week 7, it's not like they were going to have an immediate game plan for, okay, Hutchinson's down. Like, this is the game plan that we're going to. It was always going to take a little bit of time. But we've had a little bit of time now here for them to adjust. So, what have you thought about the Detroit Lions, how they have coped with the loss of Aiden Hutchinson, and then, of course, the addition to Za'Darius Smith? Like, how does that go into what they have been doing since week 6 when Aiden Hutchinson went down?
Yeah, bringing Smith in obviously is the huge game changer there, and can we get enough from him in just kind of a general 4 down and go pass rush, the way you've got to go and try and win championships with this thing. When you look at them through the first few weeks, as you mentioned, with Hutchinson on the field, a 4-man pass rush without a blitz, they had a 72.8% pass rush win rate. 72.8%. No one in the NFL was above 50. That's how dominant they were. And as you mentioned, yeah, some terrible offensive lines. Hutchinson out of his mind, right? He's making up the bulk of that stuff. He's winning basically every single rep, so he juices your figures. But now they're down to 50%, which is 10th in the NFL. Can they get that to, I don't know, 55, 56, somewhere there? I think 50% is right along. We can win a championship doing that. But you just have to have the takeaways that they've had over the past few weeks stay at the kind of level they have, which is like two basically every week, 3 some weeks, to try and think you can get through the playoffs. I think getting 2-3 takeaways every game, I just don't think is sustainable. I think you've got to just get more pressure, more drive ending plays, and an awful lot of when you go through some of their pressure figures, the unblocked pressures that have jumped up since Hutchinson's actually gone out of the lineup, it's a lot to do with the coverage and just how well they're holding up on the back end, particularly with what they do with their safety. So they just don't quite have the same level of torque, obviously, without Hutchinson there. And they've not really found, I would say, like a great kind of schematic solution to how to overcome the fact you lose a great player. Obviously, he's winning one-on-one all the time, makes everyone look really good, makes everyone's life easier. Without him, they haven't really changed any of what I would say like their pass rush profile. The sim pressure rate's pretty much the same. The blitz rate is hovering right around the same as it was before Hutchinson went out. They've changed up what they're doing in the blitz world slightly. They've had to kind of take away pressures that were designed to go off Hutchinson. He's so dominant, we'll send another guy behind him, right? They got to allocate so many resources to him. We know he's going to win, so we can tag an extra guy behind him in some way. That guy should be screaming open for the most part. Now they've had to just make it more of a linebacker straight down the chute type system, which has been somewhat effective, but is also pretty predictable on a week-to-week basis, and they're pretty tendency-based in when they send pressure to. So I just don't think they've really found a solution yet, which is understandable. They lost the best pass rusher in the NFL. It's going to be really difficult to replace that guy. You got to try and do it by finding new quirky solutions in the pressure world. You got to hope that Za'Darius Smith hits from the get-go and can at least raise the floor of the pass rush, if not kind of take the ceiling anywhere near where Hutchinson was before. So I do think that kind of under the radar in some of the makeup of what they're doing, it's slightly concerning in terms of can we get through 3-4 playoff rounds if we need to with the pass rush as it is right now.
And I wonder if they are going to just try to, not that Za'Darius Smith is Aiden Hutchinson, but like you said, I wonder if they're going to sort of try to revive their defensive line strategy by at least just putting Za'Darius Smith in that Hutchinson role and hoping that you play it a little bit better. Because, I'm looking at the numbers again. This is week 7 on. Josh Paschal, Al-Quadin Muhammad, James Houston. Like, these are the guys that are getting most of the pass rush reps. And, Muhammad, has a 12.1% pass rush win percentage. James Houston has a 12.5% pass rush win percentage. Josh Paschal is all the way down to 5.6. So it's obviously not the high impact players. And Muhammad has the highest pass rush grade of the group, but it's still just a 62.7. So, we said that it was going to take a totally different shifting to make up for the loss of Aiden Hutchinson. And it seems like what you said, they're blitzing a little bit more. They're blitzing in different ways, but you can't just have your whole strategy be based around blitzing. It's going to burn you, especially when you get into the playoffs, and I think that's the reason why you make this trade. The Detroit Lions are not necessarily worried about not making the playoffs. They're worried about, okay, when we get against the best teams in the NFL, when we have to win 3 games against the 3 toughest opponents that we have faced so far this season in a row to get to the Super Bowl and win the Super Bowl, that's where you need to make sure that you have some more in your arsenal. And I love the addition of Za'Darius Smith, not because I think that he is going to be Aiden Hutchinson, but again, because of exactly what you said. You can at least plug Smith into that role that we saw from Hutchinson, where we talked about this in the early parts of the season, how Detroit was aligned along their defensive line. It was Hutchinson a little bit wider outside the shoulder of the offensive tackle. It was a defensive tackle right on the inside shoulder of the guard, so the guard could not help out the tackle. It automatically put Hutchinson in on an island. The offensive line was normally going to have to shift their protection away from Hutchinson, so the best hope that you had was that you had a running back in the backfield that could maybe chip Hutchinson, but Hutchinson's such a monster that the hands are moving so fast, the counters are so good, and they're second nature for him. He'd even beat some of those blocks as well as the tackle in front of him. So to even have a player who gives you the capability of having that threat in that role with Za'Darius Smith, to me, is the thing that is worth monitoring moving forward, because they had a ton of success, not just with Hutchinson individually, but within that defensive line structure and that defensive line plan of putting a guy one-on-one, right? It's like the ISO basketball where it's like, all right, everybody clear out of the paint. They're playing one-on-one. I got the ball up top. Let me beat the guy to the basket. Like, that's essentially what the Lions were trying to do with Hutchinson. And I don't feel they even have a player that has the ability to win one-on-one, that has the ability to cross a guy over and get to the basket clean and get a layup. Now with Za'Darius Smith, they sort of might have that at least in flashes. And I think that's to me what I'm going to be looking forward to watching with him now on this team in that role. Do they revive that role for him specifically for what that defensive line wants to do?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think the only negative of that being the plan, right? Rather than Smith's a guy you can move around the formation, you can do cool things with, put him in different spots, line him up inside, kick him out on either edge. The brilliance of Hutchinson just being such a dominant player is, as you mentioned, not only did you able to scheme those one-on-ones, they bring extra guys in to help and chip out. By having those guys come in and help and chip out, you're washing out ineligible somewhere. There's a tight end staying in, there's a back staying in, there's a receiver having to block down, and you're just buying yourself and gaining yourself an extra player in coverage, which if you become more of a blitz-heavy team, obviously you're doing the inverse, and you're relying more on the blitz getting home and things like that. I don't know if Smith is the type of player, even going back to last season when he had a really, really good season, that it's going to force the team to necessarily keep people in to monitor him and to allocate those resources to him. So you're still not quite getting the juice and the help on the coverage side from having the dominant pass rusher as you would do with Hutchinson. I would really like to see Glenn find a way to dust off really wonky, creative, pressure stuff. That what they're doing in the blitz game is just not really kind of at the elite of the elite level. You know, you watch their offense and it's just so many cool, fresh, creative things every week. And they were so fortunate to have the best pass rusher in the NFL. That's just what Hutchinson was. And you're able to build a fairly simplistic structure to maximize everyone on the team. Now that he's gone out, the kind of answer to losing Hutchinson being we send linebackers more straight down the middle of the line of scrimmage, to me, it's just not really a great solution to what the problem was. If you're going to up the heat slightly, you're better off, I think, bringing it from really unusual, wonky places, right? Of putting weird players that you don't expect to be on the field, sending them after the quarterback, roll Brian Branch down more, use him more. And I know that they want to be sound in coverage and they've been so strong in coverage, they don't really want to mess with that. But I do think to get through the playoffs, they're either going to have to find a way to simulate pressure more or find more creative ways to kind of send for, but them to be unusual rushes than the offense is expecting. And maybe some of that will be game plan based and maybe they'll roll that out by the playoffs, but that just hasn't been shown on tape so far. And I think just expecting, well, Smith will come in, our four-man rush will be better. When what they've done, as they did with Hutchinson, said, well, our interior is really strong, so we'll blitz behind the interior. We used to blitz behind Hutchinson, now we'll blitz behind the interior, and we'll pop three things that way. When you go through the unblocked pressures, a lot of it is just kind of, a busted, naked keeper right from the quarterback. That's good. That's an unblocked pressure. It's not really like crafting something the way we were talking about with the Dolphins last night, where people think you're sending heat. Actually, everyone's dropping out, and then someone springs free through the line of scrimmage. It's like a play design win for the DC. They don't have many play design pressures from the staff, so I think they can do a lot more in that world, and Smith can help you, right? Because you can move him around all over the place, and if he is the number one go-to guy and he's head up over the center, that shifts things slightly than just saying, well, we're going to split our front like we used to with Aiden, and Smith is over there and the other three guys are over here. I just think there's more they could do, I think, in terms of the front to help them out.
And that is more towards Za'Darius Smith's style, right? And that's what's so fascinating of how they're actually going to use him. Are they going to try to put him in that Aiden role and try to get a little bit, get back to, I guess I should say, more of that four down lineman type of a team to try to win with four guys out there? But Za'Darius Smith's style, I would say, like in Cleveland with Green Bay, like with the Ravens as well, like he's been that stand-up guy. He's been that guy who's just been able to roam the line of scrimmage from a stand-up two-point stance, and you never know like really where he is rushing from. So I think that is a great point as well. Are the Lions going to lean more into what we have seen from Za'Darius Smith, or are they going to try to lean more into what they had success with in the early parts of the season? That is going to be a fascinating development. Thanks for watching, everybody. Make sure you like and subscribe the video. And if you don't have a PFF Plus subscription, you can get one to see all the premium stats that we talked about here on the show, plus the expert betting and fantasy advice over at subscribe.pff.com. The description is also right below, so if you are not a PFF Plus subscriber, you can come one today.